Hello and welcome to another episode of the NK Active podcast. I am Nick, podiatrist and director here at NK Active. So this is just an episode on my own, and you would have noticed from the last few episodes there's just been this theme around plantar fasciitis. Now, as we all know, plantar fasciitis is really common. One of the most common causes of foot pain, and one of the most common causes as to why someone goes and sees a podiatrist or healthcare professional. But it is really easy to turn around and say, I've got heel pain, I've got plantar fasciitis. It's really easy to group all aspects of heel pain together as one and call everything plantar fasciitis, but that's not the case. So I wanted to do this episode today, and we're going to keep it rather short and sweet, all around about sort of 5 different things that you can get pain around the heel region that isn't plantar fasciitis. And it's going to be 5 and a bit because there's one just related to children as well. So, number 1, Achilles tendinopathy. We see a lot of patients come to us who have said, I've been told I got plantar fasciitis, and it's not. It turns out to be an Achilles problem. Now, what is the difference? So you will still get that stiffness first thing in the morning. You'll still be stiff after a period of rest, and you'll still find the foot, everything just aches slightly around the heel region. And in general, the more exercise you do, the worse the symptoms are, especially the morning after. The big difference is actually where the symptoms are related. Plantar fasciitis will only cause problems on the bottom of the foot and going through the arch of the foot. It will not cause any problems coming up towards the back of the heel region and up the leg. If you're getting those symptoms around the back of the heel region, then one thing it could be is what is called insertional Achilles tendinopathy. Now, to move on to that sort of 5.5 bit I mentioned, was let's talk about something that can happen in children and in children only, because it's related to growth plates and children growing. And that is something that is called severs. Now, we personally don't like the term severs. We call it calcaneal apophysitis, but most people have heard of the term severs, but we're trying to change that just to be more accurate with the terminology that we're using. A lot of people will come and say, I think my child's got an Achilles tendonitis. That's not usually the case. If a child does have a true tendonitis, that tends to mean there's an inflammatory arthropathy or a more systemic problem going on that really needs to be managed by the medics and the rheumatology team. But what you can get is this calcaneal apophysitis. And effectively what that is again, you can feel stiff in the morning. Exercise will irritate it, especially common in girls and boys between the ages of 9 and 13, particularly in who play a lot of sports. And one in particular is things like dance, netball, basketball, and football. And all it effectively is where children are growing, and they're basically growing quicker than their body can keep up. And you're getting the Achilles tendon pulling on the back of the heel around where the growth plate region is, and this causes symptoms. The beauty is it will tend to settle by the age of 15, but there are things you can do in the meantime. Things like just putting a heel raise in the shoe, working on building some calf strength and calf flexibility up, and education around the activity levels. But we have done a previous episode on calcaneal apophysitis, so do go back and have a look at it. Though just a bit of reassurance, if it hurts whilst playing, which it often does, don't worry, the odds are you're not actually causing any long-term damage. So let's move on to number 2 of common causes of heel pain. Let's say we got something called what we call a retrocalcaneal bursitis. So again, people will often come and say I've got plantar fasciitis, and it's around the back of the heel region. Now, the slight difference between this and an Achilles problem is that with the retrocalcaneal bursitis, you don't tend to get the morning stiffness, as it were, and you'll notice it won't ache as much, but when it does hurt, it just comes out of nowhere, really. And what it is behind where the Achilles attaches to the back of the heel bone, you've got this little space, and you can get you've got a retrocalcaneal bursa, a fluid-filled sac, and this can sometimes become irritated. And what you'll notice is that anything that involves dropping a heel down towards the ground and the foot pointing up, so walking uphill, will irritate it. But often people find any motion of the ankle moving up and down. How do you manage it? You can look at offloading it with insoles. You can look at improving calf strength and inflexibility, but sometimes a little injection in there can really settle things down. So, point number 3 of most common causes of heel pain. Let's talk about what is called tarsal tunnel. So this is a nerve impingement of what is called the tibial nerve. So it's the main nerve that runs down the inside of the ankle region and into the foot. Now with this, symptoms again will be slightly further up the ankle between the bottom of the heel and the inside ankle bone. But the big difference is this, is you don't tend to get the aching symptoms. You don't tend to get the stiffness in the morning like you do a plantar fasciitis. What you'll report is there may be some reduction in strength and mobility through the toes, but there can often be this sharp shooting pain and numbness going through the ankle that you're just out for a walk and it just comes out of nowhere. If that's the case, then we got to be thinking, is there entrapment of the tibial nerve? And again, if there's a mechanical component to it, exercises, insoles, and footwear can be helpful. However, the knees often need a steroid injection, and if that doesn't work, then that nerve needs to be released through surgery. Number 4 is fracture or bony bruising. So I think if you've got a fracture caused by trauma, you're going to know about it. Those type of fractures only really occur when jumping and landing from height, and they are actually given the name lover's fracture because you tend to see them when people were jumping out of windows, doing things they shouldn't be with people they shouldn't with, shall we say, landing on the heels, and then they fracture the heel bone. This is a really nasty injury, and trust me, if you've had this, you will definitely know it's not plantar fasciitis because there tends to be a surgical intervention. It's a really long recovery period. There's some period of immobilization in a boot. It takes a lot of trauma to do this. Now, what is more common is what is known as bony bruising. So this can be a repetitive load over time. You haven't fractured the bone, but you just bruised it. And it's a little irritable, really common in runners, for example, and can coexist with plantar fasciitis at the same time. But there are different ways in how plantar fasciitis and bony bruising presents. With bony bruising, what you'll tend to find is every time you stand on it, around the bottom of the heel hurts. Jumping is really, really painful. And if someone wants to squeeze your heel together, I think you may let out a bit of a shriek because, again, that's not pleasant at all. The other thing you'll notice that's the big difference is that when you sit down and rest, the heel will feel like it's throbbing, it's aching. It may wake you up at night. That is all signs of bony bruising. Treatment for this is relatively simple in that the early days, you just need to offload it. So as someone with significant bony bruising, we may look at offloading in a cushioned or rocker shoe, or you may put someone in a boot for a period of time and then work on building strength and capacity up after a period of immobilization, which can be anything from 6 weeks or longer. Right, number 5, save the best till last, because this one has a few myths attached to it, and this is the wonderful calcaneal spur. And this one I've put on there as a cause of heel pain But I think the majority of the time, it's not actually relevant to anyone's pain or symptoms at all. So we see so many pictures of people coming to see us and they've had plantar fasciitis or they've got heel pain, they've had an x-ray done, and they've seen a spur going along the bottom of the foot. And then people have put 2 and 2 together and got 6. So what does the evidence actually say? Current evidence suggests that actually heel spurs aren't really related to heel pain at all. And let's just sort of dissect it and look into it as to possibly why. So on these, you've got the foot going along, and then the heel spur is following the length of the foot. So the spur is not pointing down towards the ground. It's going along the same plane as the plantar fascia, as it were. So this is most probably why the majority of them don't cause any symptoms, because it's not pointing in anywhere that is actually going to dig into the foot and cause some irritation. There is some thoughts that for people who have had long-standing plantar fasciitis in the past, or possibly calcaneal fasciitis, that this traction, this constant pulling of the plantar fascia on the heel bone over time may have what has caused this spur in the first place. But there's nothing actually linking it to that and getting a problem. So if you've got this longitudinal spur, my best advice is just do nothing about it. You live in harmony together. Don't go looking for problems. Now, there is one type of heel spur that can cause a problem. I've had a few colleagues seen. I've personally never seen one in clinic. It's when the heel spur actually grows down vertically, down towards the ground. Now, this one will cause an irritation. And again, treatment is quite simple. You either look at a soft insole to accommodate, or you look at having that spur surgically debrided. But again, it's not as simple as that, because you've got some fatty tissue to get way through first. So there we have it. 5 other causes of heel pain that are not plantar fasciitis. So please do subscribe to the podcast. If you've got any questions, you know how to get in contact with us. Really hope you enjoyed the episode, and we shall see you next month. See you later. Bye.